want to tell you about the day my marriage ended and how I turned my wife's betrayal into the most calculated victory of my life. The courtroom had that familiar smell of aged wood mixed with stale coffee. I sat at the defendant's table wearing my only decent suit, the navy blue one I purchased for my father's funeral more than a decade ago. It still fit reasonably well, though I had dropped some weight since Lorelei initiated divorce proceedings. That's what stress does to a person. My name is Bridger Tallis, and I'm 47 years old. I make my home in Marietta, Georgia, which sits roughly 20 minutes from Atlanta. I had been married to Lorelei Tallis for 18 years, and she was currently seated across the courtroom aisle, deliberately avoiding any eye contact with me. She looked impressive that day, sporting a fresh haircut and an obviously expensive blouse, radiating the kind of self-assurance that comes from believing victory is assured. Her attorney, an aggressive lawyer named Quinlan Voss, was organizing documents beside her with the smooth efficiency of someone who had orchestrated this scene countless times before. My own lawyer, a younger man named Rowan Castillo, who was stretching my limited budget, leaned close to speak quietly in my ear. He told me this was my final opportunity, that we could still contest the settlement. He reminded me the business alone was valued at more than $2 million, that I had built it from absolutely nothing, and that she shouldn't be allowed to simply take it. I told him to let her have it. He questioned whether I had lost my mind, pointing out that she was taking everything: the house, the bank accounts, the company, everything except one thing. He stopped himself because we both understood what he was about to say. Everything except Sable, our 16-year-old daughter who was born with cystic fibrosis. She's the reason I wake up each morning, the reason I continue breathing. Lorelei didn't want custody of her and had made that abundantly clear in her legal filing. She had written that full custody should go to the father, as though our daughter were a piece of furniture she was choosing not to take when she moved out. I told Rowan I knew exactly what I was doing. He asked if I truly did, because from his perspective it appeared I was surrendering my entire life to a woman who had abandoned her sick child. I didn't offer a response to that. I simply stared at the sealed envelope resting on the judge's desk, the envelope that was going to transform everything. Judge Althea Drummond entered the courtroom precisely at 9 in the morning. She was an austere woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled severely back and reading glasses balanced on her nose. Her reputation for impartiality was well established, which was precisely what I required. She announced we were convened for the final dissolution hearing in Tallis versus Tallis. She settled into her chair and stated she had reviewed the proposed settlement agreement. Before giving her approval, she wanted to confirm that both parties comprehended and accepted the terms. Quinlan Voss rose to his feet, fastening his jacket button. He informed the court that his client Lorelei Tallis had agreed to accept complete ownership of Tallis Contracting LLC, the marital home located at 445 Cedarbrook Lane, all liquid assets totaling approximately $847,000, and the vacation property in Tybee Island. In return, she was waiving all claims to future earnings and agreeing to relinquish full custody of the minor child, Sable Tallis, to her father. He recited these terms as though reading a shopping list, as though my daughter were merely another item to be checked off. Judge Drummond turned her attention to me and asked if I had agreed to these terms. Rowan nudged me, pleading with me not to go through with it. I stood up and confirmed that yes, I accepted the terms. A murmur rippled through the small gallery. My brother Garrick was present, along with Rowan's paralegal and several other people I didn't recognize. I heard Garrick mutter something under his breath, probably calling me a fool. He had been doing that frequently lately. Lorelei was smiling now, displaying that tight, victorious smile she always wore when she won an argument. She leaned over to whisper something to Quinlan, likely already planning how she would spend my money. Judge Drummond stated that it was settled and asked me to approach and sign the final documents. I walked to the bench where the clerk handed me a pen. One by one, I signed the papers that surrendered everything I had spent 20 years building, the house I had renovated with my own 2 hands, the business I had expanded from a pickup truck and a toolbox into a company employing 47 people. the savings account I had filled dollar by dollar through countless late nights and endless sacrifices. I signed away every bit of it. When I finished, I looked directly at Lorelei. She was practically radiant with triumph. She thanked me sweetly, saying she knew I would do the right thing. I didn't respond, just returned to my seat. Judge Drummond was organizing the documents when she paused. She noted there appeared to be one additional submission, picking up the sealed envelope. She stated that I had filed this separately, marked as Exhibit H, personal submission for judicial review only. The smile vanished from Lorelei's face. She asked sharply what that was. Judge Drummond opened the envelope and extracted the contents, a stack of papers perhaps 20 pages thick, and began reading. The courtroom fell completely silent. I watched Lorelei's face, watched the confusion slowly morph into something else as Judge Drummond continued reading, page after page, her expression growing darker with each one. Finally, the judge looked up. She asked Mrs. Tallis if her legal representation was aware of these documents. Quinlan Voss frowned and stated that he hadn't seen whatever that was, that his client had been fully transparent. Judge Drummond suggested perhaps he should see them now. The clerk handed copies to Quinlan. He began reading, and I watched all color drain from his face. He leaned toward Lorelei and whispered 4 words that this changed absolutely everything. Lorelei grabbed the papers from his hands. She read the first page, then the second, then the third, then she collapsed. Not exactly fainting, but more like her legs simply gave out. She slid from her chair and hit the floor, papers scattering around her. Quinlan was shouting for water. People in the gallery were standing up. Rowan was staring at me with his mouth hanging open. I just sat there, calm as could be, waiting for the chaos to settle. I had been planning this for 2 years, and it was only just beginning. Let me explain who Lorelei is. We met back in 1999 at a construction site in Roswell. I was 22 years old at the time, working as a framing carpenter for a company that barely paid minimum wage. She was 19, working the reception desk at a real estate office across the street. She used to bring me lemonade during her lunch breaks. That might sound insignificant, but you need to understand what my life was like during that period. I had grown up in poverty in rural Alabama. I dropped out of high school to help support my family and relocated to Georgia with nothing but a duffel bag and a willingness to work hard. Nobody had ever taken care of me before. Nobody had ever brought me lemonade just because they wanted to. Lorelei did that. We married in 2001 at the Fulton County Courthouse. There was no family present, no friends, just the 2 of us and a judge who looked like he wished he were somewhere else. I promised her that someday I would give her the proper wedding she deserved, a grand one with flowers and a beautiful dress and everything she had dreamed about. I never fulfilled that promise. There was always something more urgent, another bill to pay, another job to complete, another crisis to handle. Sable was born in 2008. The pregnancy was difficult, and when she arrived 6 weeks premature, we knew immediately something was wrong. The doctors conducted tests for 3 days before delivering the diagnosis of cystic fibrosis. If you're unfamiliar with that condition, let me explain. CF is a genetic disease affecting the lungs and digestive system. It causes thick, sticky mucus to accumulate in the body, resulting in infections, breathing difficulties, and a shortened lifespan. The average life expectancy for someone with CF has improved dramatically in recent decades, but it still demands constant management through medications, physical therapy, and regular hospital visits. It's exhausting and terrifying, essentially a full-time job on top of whatever other full-time job you already have. Lorelei struggled with it from the very beginning. I don't say that to be cruel or judgmental. I believe she genuinely tried, at least initially. But caring for a chronically ill child requires a particular kind of endurance that not everyone possesses. You need to wake up at 3 a.m. for breathing treatments and then go to work as if nothing happened. You need to smile when doctors deliver bad news. You need to hold your child while she coughs until she vomits, and then repeat it all again the next day. Lorelei couldn't manage it, By the time Sable reached 5 years old, Lorelei had emotionally withdrawn. Not physically, at least not at first. She was still living in the house, still going through the motions, but emotionally, she had disappeared. She stopped attending doctor's appointments, stopped helping with physical therapy, stopped functioning as a mother as far as I could tell. I picked up all the slack because what other choice did I have? Sable needed someone, and I was that someone. Meanwhile, Talus Contracting was experiencing significant growth. The company I had started in 2005 with a used truck and a business card printed at a copy shop was becoming something substantial. We were securing commercial contracts, residential developments, government bids. By 2015, we had 40 employees and revenue exceeding $3 million annually. I was proud of what I had built, but I was also completely exhausted. Operating a business while serving as primary caregiver for a sick child leaves virtually no room for anything else, including maintaining a marriage. Lorelei and I grew distant. We stopped discussing anything except logistics, like who was picking up Sable, when the next payment was due, whether we had remembered to buy milk. I should have anticipated the affair. His name was Kellen Whitmore, a commercial real estate developer who had hired Talus Contracting for a strip mall project in Alpharetta. He was polished and successful, the type of man who wore expensive watches and drove cars costing more than most people's houses. Lorelei met him at a company event in 2020. By 2021, they were having an affair. I discovered it the way husbands typically discover these things, through a phone left unlocked and messages that were supposed to remain hidden. Messages saying, "I love you, baby. Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. When are you going to leave him? I want you all to myself." I read them all, hundreds of messages spanning months, a complete betrayal documented digitally. I wanted to confront her immediately, wanted to scream and throw things and demand explanations. But something stopped me. Sable. If I destroyed the marriage right then, what would happen to our daughter? Lorelei had already proven she couldn't be relied upon. A messy divorce and custody battle, with lawyers tearing apart our finances while Sable's medical bills accumulated, would destroy everything I had built to protect her. So I did something that surprised even myself. I started planning. The first step was hiring a private investigator. His name was Lennox Thorne, a former Atlanta police detective who now specialized in domestic cases. He was expensive but thorough. I told him I needed everything, every meeting, every hotel room, every lie. Over the following 18 months, Lennox delivered results. He provided photographs of Lorelei and Kellen at restaurants, hotels, even his beach house in Savannah. He uncovered financial records showing gifts he had purchased for her, trips they had taken together, an entire secret life funded by his money and concealed from me. But that wasn't the most significant thing Lennox discovered. During one of our meetings, he told me I needed to see something and slid a folder across the table. I opened it to find bank statements, not from our joint accounts, which I monitored carefully, but from accounts I had never seen before, accounts in Lorelei's name alone. Over the previous 3 years, she had been siphoning money from Talus Contracting. Small amounts initially, a few hundred here and there, easily hidden within the chaos of a busy business. But the amounts had grown substantially. By the time Lennox found it, she had stolen over $340,000. Lennox explained she had been embezzling from my own company and funneling the money into accounts she believed I didn't know about. I stared at the numbers in disbelief. $340,000. Money I had earned with my hands, my sweat, my years of sacrifice, simply gone. Lennox continued, saying there was more. She and Kellen had been discussing starting their own business, a property development company, and he asked me to guess where the startup capital was coming from. My money. I sat with that information for an extended period. In a normal divorce, this would be devastating evidence, proof of infidelity and theft, enough to destroy Lorelei in court and allow me to walk away with everything. But I had a different idea. Georgia operates under equitable distribution law. That means in a divorce, assets are divided fairly, but not necessarily equally. A judge considers many factors, including the length of the marriage, each spouse's contributions, future earning potential, and misconduct. Misconduct was the crucial word. If Lorelei filed for divorce thinking she was going to win, thinking she would take everything and walk away clean, she would become overconfident. She would overreach and make mistakes, and if I let her believe she had won, if I gave her exactly what she requested, I could use those mistakes to reclaim everything, plus additional damages. I spent 6 months working with a forensic accountant, documenting every dollar Lorelei had stolen. We traced the money through shell accounts, through Kellen's businesses, through an elaborate maze of transactions designed to conceal the theft. Then I took everything to a prosecutor in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. Her name was Vesper Hartwell, and she specialized in financial crimes. When she reviewed what I had, her eyes lit up with interest. She told me this was textbook embezzlement, and combined with evidence of the affair, they could build a case that would put my wife in prison. I told her I didn't want her in prison, not yet anyway. Vesper frowned and asked what I did want. I told her I wanted timing, wanted her to file for divorce first, wanted her to think she was winning, and then at precisely the right moment, I wanted everything to come crashing down on her. She said that was unconventional. I explained that my daughter has cystic fibrosis, and her mother is abandoning her to run off with a wealthy boyfriend, so conventional stopped being an option long ago. Vesper studied me for a long moment before nodding and asking what I needed. We built the case over the next year, assembling every piece of evidence, every witness, every document. Vesper prepared charges but agreed to hold them until I gave the signal. Meanwhile, I started moving assets, not hiding them because that would be illegal, and I wasn't going to give Lorelei any ammunition. Instead, I restructured. I created trusts for Sable's medical care that couldn't be touched in a divorce. I shifted ownership of certain properties into business entities that Lorelei didn't know about. I documented everything meticulously, kept thorough records, made sure every move was legal and defensible, and then I waited. Lorelei filed for divorce in January of this year. She came home one evening, sat me down at the kitchen table, and told me she wanted out. She said she wasn't happy, and hadn't been happy for years. I told her I knew. She looked surprised that I knew. I confirmed I knew about Kellen and everything else. For a moment, fear flickered across her face before disappearing, replaced by that hard, calculating expression I had come to know intimately. She said fine. Then I knew why the marriage was over. She said she wanted the house, the business, and the savings, and I could have Sable because she knew how much our daughter meant to me. She stated it as though she were being generous, as though giving me custody of our sick child was some kind of gift. I said okay. She asked if I meant just like that, and I confirmed just like that. She stared at me, waiting for the catch because there had to be a catch. Bridger Tallis, the man who fought for everything, was just going to surrender without a fight. She finally said she would have her lawyer send the papers. I told her I would sign them, and I did, every single one. Because the trap was already set. All I had to do was let her walk into it. The courtroom was still chaotic. Lorelei was on the floor hyperventilating. Quinlan Voss was trying to help her up while simultaneously reading through the documents, his face growing paler with each page. Judge Drummond was banging her gavel demanding order. I just sat there, calm and patient. Rowan grabbed my arm and demanded to know what the hell was in those papers. I told him the truth. Eventually they got Lorelei back into her chair. Someone brought her water. She was shaking with mascara running down her cheeks, looking nothing like the confident woman who had walked in an hour earlier. Judge Drummond finally restored order and asked Mr. Voss if he had been aware of the contents of Exhibit H. Quinlan was sweating and stated no. This was completely unexpected. His client had not disclosed any of this. Judge Drummond said she would summarize for everyone. She explained that Exhibit H contained comprehensive documentation of embezzlement spanning 3 years. Specifically, Mrs. Tallis had systematically transferred funds from Tallis Contracting LLC into personal accounts without authorization, totaling $341,000. These funds were then commingled with income from Kellen Whitmore and used to fund a relationship with him, a real estate developer with whom she had been having an affair since 2021. Lorelei made a sound like a wounded animal. The judge continued, stating the exhibit also contained photographs, text messages, and witness statements documenting the affair. Additionally, it included a letter from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office indicating that criminal charges for embezzlement, wire fraud, and tax evasion were pending against Mrs. Tallis, contingent on the outcome of these proceedings. Quinlan shot to his feet, declaring this was ambush litigation, that they had no opportunity to review these allegations, that his client had rights. I said quietly that his client had been stealing from me for 3 years, and she could discuss her rights with the prosecutor. Judge Drummond held up her hand and told both of us to sit down. She turned to Lorelei and asked if she had anything to say in response to these allegations. Lorelei was crying openly now, stammering that I was lying, that I had to be lying, that she never did any of this. Judge Drummond noted these were bank records and transaction histories and asked if she denied these accounts existed. Silence. She asked if Lorelei denied transferring money from Tallis Contracting into these accounts without her husband's knowledge or consent. More silence. Judge Drummond nodded slowly, indicating she understood. She removed her reading glasses and set them on the desk, then asked me to help her understand something. She noted I knew about the embezzlement and the affair, yet I agreed to sign over virtually all marital assets to my wife, and she wanted to know why. I told her it was because I wanted Lorelei to show who she really is. She asked me to explain further. I told her that Lorelei abandoned our daughter. I explained that Sable has cystic fibrosis and requires constant care, expensive medications, and regular hospitalizations. When Lorelei filed for divorce, she specifically requested that I take full custody because she didn't want her own child. I paused to steady my voice before continuing. I explained I could have fought, could have dragged this through the courts for years, but Sable doesn't have years to waste. She needs stability and needs to know that at least one parent puts her first. The judge asked if that's why I let my wife take everything. I clarified that I let her think she was taking everything. The assets she claimed, the house, the business, the accounts, were all tainted now. The business was funded with embezzled money. The accounts contained stolen funds. The house was purchased with commingled assets that were now evidence in a criminal case. I looked at Lorelei, who was staring at me with pure hatred, and stated that everything she took, she was going to have to give back, and then some. Judge Drummond was silent for an extended moment. Then, remarkably, she almost smiled. She asked if I was telling her that I deliberately structured this divorce to ensure my wife would incriminate herself. I responded that I was telling her I gave my wife exactly what she asked for, and it wasn't my fault she asked for evidence of her own crimes. Quinlan was on his feet again, declaring this was entrapment. Judge Drummond's voice turned to ice as she stated this was a man protecting his daughter. She noted that his client chose to steal, chose to have an affair, and chose to abandon a sick child, while Mr. Tallis simply chose not to stop her. She picked up her gavel and announced she was vacating the settlement agreement in its entirety. Given the evidence of fraud and embezzlement, she was ordering a full forensic audit of all marital assets. Any assets derived from criminal activity would be forfeited. Additionally, she was referring this matter to the district attorney's office for immediate action. She looked at Lorelei and strongly suggested she retain a criminal defense attorney because she was going to need one. The gavel came down with finality. Lorelei screamed, actually screamed, a raw sound of rage and despair that echoed off the courtroom walls. She called me a bastard and accused me of planning this, of destroying her. I stood and gathered my papers, telling her calmly that no, she destroyed herself. I just made sure everyone could see it. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. In the hallway, Garrick was waiting for me. He told me he took it back, that I wasn't an idiot, that I was the smartest person he knew. I told him I wasn't smart. I was just a father. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sable's number. She was home with the nurse, waiting to hear how things went. She asked what happened. I told her to pack a bag because we were going to get ice cream and I would explain everything when I got there. She asked if we won. I thought about that question, about what winning really meant. I told her, yeah, baby, we won. The criminal trial took 8 months. Lorelei's lawyer, a different one because Quinlan Voss had dropped her immediately after the divorce hearing, tried everything. She claimed I had coerced her, claimed she didn't understand what she was doing, claimed the money was actually owed to her as compensation for her years as a homemaker. None of it worked. The evidence was too solid. The forensic accountants had traced every dollar. The prosecutors had documented every lie. In the end, Lorelei pleaded guilty to 3 counts of embezzlement and 1 count of wire fraud. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 2. Kellen Whitmore disappeared the moment criminal charges were filed. It turned out he had known about the embezzlement and had even helped structure some of the transactions. When subpoenas started flying, he liquidated his local holdings and moved to Costa Rica. Last I heard, he was developing beachfront condos and pretending none of this ever happened. Lorelei sent me a letter from prison about 6 months into her sentence. I didn't open it for weeks. When I finally did, it was shorter than I expected. She wrote that she knew I wouldn't forgive her, and she wasn't sure she would forgive herself either. But she needed me to know she was sorry, not for getting caught, but for everything, for Sable, for us, for all of it. She wrote that she was weak and selfish, that she told herself she deserved more, and used that lie to justify everything she did. She asked me to tell Sable she loved her, even if Sable didn't believe it. Even if I didn't believe it, she did. I showed the letter to Sable. She read it twice, then handed it back to me. She asked if I thought Lorelei meant it. I told her I didn't know, maybe. She asked if I forgave her mother. I thought about that for a long time before saying I was working on it. Sable nodded and said she was too. That's the thing about forgiveness. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a light switch you flip and suddenly everything is bright again. It's more like a sunrise, slow and gradual, and some days the clouds come back and you can't see any light at all. But you keep waiting, and eventually the sun rises again. The assets were eventually sorted out. After the forensic audit, after the legal fees, after the restitution payments, I ended up with about 60% of what we had before the divorce. The house was sold, the business restructured, the vacation property liquidated. It was less than I started with, but more than I needed. I used some of the money to pay off Sable's medical bills. The rest went into a trust fund that will take care of her for the rest of her life, however long that turns out to be. Modern medicine has made incredible advances in treating CF. When Sable was born, the average life expectancy was about 35 years. Now it's closer to 50 and climbing. New medications, new therapies, new reasons for hope. She's 18 now and just graduated high school. She's planning to start community college in the fall to study art therapy. She wants to work with sick kids, help them express their feelings through painting and drawing. She told me she knows what it's like to be scared and she wants to help other kids feel less alone. I cried when she said that. Couldn't help it. This kid, this amazing kid who has spent her entire life fighting just to breathe, wants to spend her future helping others fight too. If that's not proof that something good can come from something terrible, I don't know what is. Lorelei got out of prison last spring. She's living in a halfway house in Brunswick, working at a grocery store, trying to rebuild some kind of life. She asked if she could see Sable. I left that decision to my daughter. Sable said yes. They've met twice now, mostly for coffee, short visits with careful conversations. I don't know if they'll ever have a real relationship. Too much has happened. Too much damage has been done. But they're trying. And sometimes trying is all you can do. I sold Talus Contracting last year. A bigger company made an offer, and after thinking about it for a while, I decided to accept. The business had been good to me and had given me everything, but it had also taken everything. Every late night, every missed moment with Sable, Every sacrifice that seemed necessary at the time but now felt like something stolen. I wanted those moments back. Not the ones already gone because you can't get those, but the ones still coming. So I took the money and walked away. I'm not retired exactly. I still consult sometimes, help smaller contractors figure out their operations, but mostly I spend my time with Sable, driving her to appointments, helping her with her art projects, just being there, present and available the way I always wanted to be, but couldn't quite manage when I was building an empire. It's enough, more than enough. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things, the trap, the patience, the 2 years of watching my wife steal from me while I documented everything and waited for the right moment. They wonder if I couldn't have just divorced her normally, confronted her, fought it out in court, and moved on with my life. Maybe I could have, but here's what I've learned about justice. It doesn't always look the way you expect. Sometimes justice is a judge slamming a gavel and sending someone to prison. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's a sick kid graduating high school, while the parent who abandoned her watches from a halfway house in Brunswick. Sometimes justice is just surviving. I spent 18 years married to a woman who slowly revealed herself to be someone I didn't recognize. Someone selfish, someone calculating, someone capable of abandoning her own child to chase a fantasy with a man who left her the moment things got hard. I could be angry about that, and part of me is, probably always will be. But anger is heavy and it takes up space you need for other things. What I carry instead is gratitude. Grateful for Sable, who taught me what love really means. Grateful for the years of struggle which showed me what I'm capable of. Grateful even for Lorelei in a strange way, because without her betrayal, I might never have discovered how strong I actually am. The day after the final divorce hearing, I took Sable to get ice cream like I promised. We sat in a booth at a little shop near our house, her eating mint chocolate chip, me working on butter pecan. She asked between bites if I was okay, really okay. I told her I thought so, that I was getting there anyway. She asked if Mom really did all those things, the stealing and everything. I confirmed, yeah, she did. She asked why, saying we had a good life, didn't we? I thought about how to answer that. How do you explain to a teenager that some people are never satisfied, that some people spend their whole lives chasing something better and never realize that what they have is already enough? I finally said her mom got lost, that she forgot what mattered, and by the time she remembered it was too late. Sable asked if I thought her mother ever loved us. I told her I think she loved us the best she knew how. It just wasn't enough. Sable was quiet for a moment before reaching across the table and taking my hand. She told me that my love was enough, that just so I knew, it was always enough. I couldn't speak after that, just held her hand and let the tears fall into my butter pecan. That's the thing about being a parent. You spend years worrying that you're failing, that you're not doing enough, that your kids are going to grow up damaged by all your mistakes, and then one day they say something that lets you know you got it right. Maybe not all of it, maybe not perfectly, but enough. I keep a photograph on my desk now from Sable's graduation. She's in her cap and gown holding her diploma, smiling so wide it looks like her face might break. I'm standing next to her with my arm around her shoulder, looking like a man who has finally figured out what matters. Behind us, just barely visible in the corner of the frame, is an empty chair, the one we saved for Lorelei just in case she got permission to attend. She didn't come. Something about paperwork and approvals that didn't go through in time. Sable cried about it for about 10 minutes, then she wiped her eyes, put on her gown, and walked across that stage like she owned it. That's my girl. I look at that photograph every morning. It reminds me of something important. Life doesn't give you what you deserve. It gives you what you build, what you fight for, what you refuse to let go of, even when everything is trying to tear it away. Lorelei thought she could take everything from me. She thought I would crumble and fall apart, become another sad story about a man who got destroyed in a divorce. She was wrong because she forgot the most important thing. She forgot about Sable, and a father protecting his daughter is the most dangerous thing in the world. So here's my question for you. What would you refuse to give up? What would you fight for, sacrifice for, burn everything down for if you had to? And if you don't have something like that in your life yet, maybe it's time to find it. Tell me what matters most to you. And if you know someone who's going through a fight right now, someone who feels like they're losing everything, share this story with them, because sometimes the people who look like they're losing are actually setting up the biggest win of their lives. You just have to be patient enough to see it through.